for helping organize this call on what we believe is a very critical topic. If everyone can see my screen share, I'm going to just explain what we're going to try to cover today in the next hour. So as I think all of you have seen in the invitation, this particular web dialogue is going to focus about access to justice and how that's been impacted during COVID-19, and why even more so than ever, there are a critical opportunity for action. And what are some of the challenges that have been faced, and what are these opportunities? And what are the system changes that we can make to make sure that going forward, we take advantage of this challenge of COVID-19 as an opportunity to ensure everyone's due process rights are protected. I think most of you had the chance to receive an agenda of the call, so let me just highlight what we will cover in the next hour. We'll begin with me handing over to Karen C., who's the founder and CEO of International Bridges of Justice, as well as one of our IBJ board members, Mia Yamamoto, who will make opening remarks. Then the bulk of the call will be handing over to my colleague, Sanjiva Liyanji, who's the International Program Director for International Bridges of Justice, who will sort of give a tour of the world. And you can see the various colleagues from IBJ, country offices, and justice makers who will each share a bit of what's happening in their particular country and part of the world and some of the challenges and opportunities that they see. We'll hopefully have some time for a bit of a discussion, and then we'll close the call at 7 o'clock Central European time. So with that, let me hand over to Karen for her opening remarks. So Karen, over to you, please.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good everything from all of us around the world. I am just so very happy to see all of you, and I know that we are coming from so many different places, and yet we're really joined and united together in a common vision for access to justice for all. So thank you so much for being here. And it's also a particular joy to see so many IBJ defenders and IBJ justice makers who have joined us. So often when I talk to many of you who are on the call, we talk about our justice makers, we talk about our defenders, but we're not able to all meet together. And so this is one of the actually exciting things about today, and maybe exciting about COVID-19, is that it's brought us to this place where we actually all can meet today on Zoom. So it's also really exciting for me because we have, I think, almost 200 people on the call. And when you look at it, we have not just lawyers, we have doctors, we have not just civil society, we have government, we have corporations, we have foundations, we have bilaterals, we have universities. It is just a fantastic group of people who have joined together with us today in terms of looking at what we can do. So as many of you already know, International Bridges to Justice focuses on giving people a lawyer early on in police stations and in courtrooms. And we know that in countries throughout the world, people are arbitrarily detained and tortured and denied access to counsel. And the thing that we realized 20 years ago when we founded International Bridges to Justice is that there was, although this is a huge problem throughout the world, where a third globally and much higher in many countries, some places 50%, some places 70% of people who are still in pretrial detention, who have never had their day in court, although, and many people are tortured because of the cheapest form of investigation. While these huge problems are here, we also know that there's an amazing solution, and that is the protection of early access to a lawyer. Now, during this time with COVID-19, we are in an even more particular crisis. But as we've discussed in many different times, actually, there is a crisis now, but there was really a crisis before the crisis. So as we discuss today how we move forward, we're really looking at what are the particular challenges of COVID-19, but how do we not make this just a Band-Aid? Many of you know too that the problems that have arisen with COVID-19, in particular with due process rights violations, have a lot to do with maybe governments who have put down new laws, emergency laws, some places to protect people for health reasons, and some places for other reasons. And our defenders are there. So there's countries where tens of thousands of people have been arrested. I know that in some countries where tens of thousands of people have been arrested, our defenders are continuing to move forward. And at the same time, we're looking at issues of prison overcrowding, places in prisons where it's literally just an incubation space for the virus, and really cruel and unusual punishment where people who came in not necessarily to die are dying. And that's not just for the health reason of coronavirus, but in some places it's also for things as simple as food. And as we were thinking about, one of our defenders the other day said that 40 people had died in the prison in the DRC. And, you know, this is really related to the crisis before the crisis, because we thought about the fact that it could be somebody that was there because the last time I was in the prison, I remember meeting a 14-year-old who was there because he stole a sheet and a drink. We've met women there because they stood up for their land cases. So there are so many cases right now where it wasn't meant to be a death penalty, but it's turning into that. So I'm super, super excited for you to meet our defenders. And the first defender that I'd love to introduce you to is Mia Yamamoto, who is one of our founding board members. And she is the defender of defenders. And as we go through and you meet all these defenders, I really want you to know that we're super excited that it's not only defenders coming together, because in order for us to really realize this vision of early access to a lawyer for every person, in order for us to really protect due process rights during COVID-19, in order for us to really create system change, it really takes the energy and efforts of every single person. And that's why we're here together, to hear from the defenders, but also see what we can do together. So
right,
I'm
over
coming.
to you, Mia. Please make your welcoming remark, Mia. Pleasure to have you on board here too. Go ahead, Mia, you're on. I just unmuted you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me be on this call. Thank you for taking your time to talk about this. I'm a defender. I've been a defender my whole career, virtually. I've always represented poor people and people who have been charged with criminal offenses. And right now, the front lines of due process, access to justice is with defenders. It's happening all over the world. In our systems all over the world, we are the most intimate contact with the clients. We have the most difficulty with physical distancing, and yet the courts do not protect our clients, nor our defenders, nor our interpreters, who are required to come into intimate contact with prisoners and those accused of crimes. So we are on those lines. We care about what's going on with respect to that, because these things affect access to justice. These things affect our mission. And I'm with IBJ, been with them from the beginning, because this matters. Because the people who nobody cares about matter more than anything. In a truly civilized society, they are the people who are the most important. Access to justice for the poor, marginalized, and oppressed is equal to equal justice for all. I look at the ideals that we're trying to achieve under the conditions which have been placed upon us, and I salute all of you in this mission for all of us and for all of our clients, which will ultimately mean the benefit of society. And we have to fight back against governmental intrusions on the rights of people. We have to take full defense against the opportunists who are using this crisis to take full advantage against democratic institutions and processes, and against dissidents, protesters, and those who disagree with the policies of the government. And like IBJ has been and continues to be, we are against the abuses of physical people, against the rights of people. We demand their physical security. Abuse of people through torture is still one of the most violent and reprehensible and processes of governments all over the world. I continue to stand with IBJ against torture, which is what posed under cover of government protection of the population is another place where we have to be, because we are on the front lines of this conflict in ways which are most important to the future of human rights in all of our countries. So thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Karen. So let me put my screen back on again so we can go back to the agenda, remind everyone, for those of you that joined late. We are just finishing our opening remarks, and we're now going to turn to, I guess I call it the tour of the world, but it's really giving the floor to Sanjaya, who's our International Program Director for International Budget Justice, who will moderate this next segment where we're really going to get to hear from the front lines, from the criminal defenders that are out there doing the work on what's happening. So with that, Sanjay, I'm handing over to you, and please just tell me when you want me to advance the slides, because I know you're going to show a few background slides on the work that we're doing. Over to you, Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And I see so many familiar faces and also so many new faces. And my name is Sanjay Valiyanage. I am the International Program Director of IBJ. And first of all, I want to say access to justice, so access to a lawyer is still a luxury for many people. Today, there are about 10 million people in prisons around the world. 3 million of them are waiting for trial or unconvicted. In my own country, in Sri Lanka, 6 out of 10 people in prisons are remand prisoners or pre-trial detainees. In Democratic Republic of Congo, 7 out of 10, and in Bangladesh, 8 out of 10 are unconvicted. Most of these people are the poor. And most of these prisons are overcrowded. It is in this context we are discussing catalyzing access to justice during a pandemic like COVID-19. Now in Sri Lanka, in my own country, during the recent months, there have been over 66,000 arrests for curfew violations due to the COVID pandemic. Many have witnessed police beating up people before being arrested. IBJ, as a global leader in access to justice, has mobilized its defender community in over 48 countries. During this pandemic, we've convened 157 online meetings, amounting to 2,500 meeting hours and 6,057 participants around the world. Responding to COVID-19, we created a COVID-19 toolkit for defense lawyers that includes sample statements, checklists to better arm the lawyers. IBJ issued a statement available in 6 languages, calling on governments to implement safer and more limited use of pretrial detention and system-wide adoption of fair trial standards. We highlighted that extraordinary national measures to combat the spread of COVID-19 pandemic should not be justified to derogate from state responsibility to respect and protect due process rights. We also published a set of guidelines for law enforcement agencies, prisons, and courts that included community-centered policing, avoid use of excessive force, treat the population with compassion and care, support and protect internal and external migrants, differing arrests and prosecution in minor matters so as to avoid overwhelming prisons and courtrooms, facilitate the release of accused persons charged with non-violent and minor offenses on free bail so as to decongest remand prisons, continue to hold all critical hearings, including remand hearings, bail, bond applications, habeas corpus applications, use teleconferencing technologies to ensure court proceedings are conducted virtually so as to minimize human interaction while expediting processes, especially in bail hearings. For example, we have heard this kind of use of technology has been used in India, Sri Lanka, and in Rwanda, which I'll explain a bit later. More importantly, we recommended upholding the right to legal representation and allow lawyers to travel and attend to arrested and detained persons even during periods of lockdown or curfews whilst complying with WHO safety guidelines. These statements and guidelines were adopted and used to appeal to local authorities in a number of countries. For example, in Burundi, Bridges to Justice submitted a statement with measures to increase protection to detainees from COVID-19 to the Minister of Justice. When BBJ met with the ministry later, they commended our efforts to work collaboratively to advance access to justice even during this pandemic. In Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC-BJ submitted a letter to judicial authorities requesting that prisoners held in pretrial detention are granted temporary release until court sessions are resumed. DRC-BJ also advocating that courts allow special hearings for provisional releases requests and reduce bail fees to decrease prison overcrowding. In Rwanda, along with Rwanda Bar Association, lawyers from Rwanda Bridges to Justice, RBJ, are the only lawyers nationwide permitted entry into detention facilities during lockdown. Since lockdown, RBJ conducts visits to detention facilities 3 times a week, and on April 14th, RBJ lawyers went online representing cases in the new online legal representation system implemented in Kigali. Now in Sri Lanka, as of April, IBJ efforts have been successful in releasing over 2,900 detainees on police bail due to COVID-19 outbreak. In Sri Lanka, IBJ and IBJ lawyers nationwide drafted bail guidelines for prisoners, which were accepted by the Attorney General's Department, with 8,000 remand prisoners now eligible for release. These are some of our responses to this unprecedented global emergency and impact of our defenders around the world. I now invite my colleagues to share their experiences and impact of their initiative. So for me, I have a number of colleagues joining. First, I'd like to invite Jean-Claude from Burundi. Jean-Claude.
Thank you so much, Sanji, for inviting me to speak. I'm Jean-Claude Barakamfiti, Country Manager of IBJ Burundi, Burundi Bridges to Justice. Prisons in Burundi are heavily overpopulated, and some are 250 over capacity. Instead of taking urgent measures to reduce number of detainees, our criminal justice system keeps on adding hundreds of new detainees in Burundi of already overcrowded prisons. UN Committee Against Torture has concluded that dire conditions in Burundi prisons amount into cruel and unusual treatment. Due to COVID-19, the situation in prison have worsened, locking down detainees who were already locked down. In Burundi, most detainees are dependent upon food and medicine brought to them by their families during visits. Due to COVID-19, all visits to prison were suspended. This has created food shortage, as well as much needs psychological support through visiting family members. IBJ Burundi has been working in justice system sector since 2008. We have trained hundreds of lawyers on legal skills. We have built a robust and committed group of lawyers providing access to justice to the most vulnerable on pro bono basis. Due to COVID-19, we began using technology to stay connected as defender community, enabling us to gather insights of defense lawyers despite social distancing and find a way to overcome challenges. We also reached out to our partners, especially state institutions, by making recommendations to facilitate access to a lawyer by the accused. Due to our interventions, prison authorities allowed our lawyer to visit detainees despite lockdown of prisons. We also increased police cells and prison visits to provide early access to a counsel to the arrestee in police station, which prevented numbers of them to enter overpopulated prisons. We equipped our lawyers with self-protection kits during their police cells and prison visit to provide free legal representation. Burundi Criminal Procedure Code makes legal assistance compulsory for a limited number of persons, like children. The National Legal Aid Strategy has not integrated early access to a counsel for all. Therefore, a key recommendation is to advocate for change in the National Legal Aid Strategy to include early access to a counsel for the accused, which can catalyze access to justice at all times, including during pandemics. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Claude. I now want to invite Yvonne Alphonse Mobofe, our Justice Maker Fellow from Cameroon. Yvonne, you can unmute and speak.
Thank you very much, Sanjiva, for inviting me to speak. My name is Yvonne Alphonse Mabofe, and I am an IBG Justice Makers Fellow from Cameroon. Access to justice has been adversely affected, access to justice in Cameroon during the COVID-19 crisis. Detainees have been the worst affected by the impact of COVID-19 for various reasons, such as their inability to access legal aid services due to restrictions to carry out visits to prisons and a police station first. Second, the postponement of trials for some, and finally, restriction of family visits. To overcome these challenges, we as lawyers in Cameroon manage the leverage technology to interact with our partners. To this end, we created technology platforms with judicial actors such as prosecutors, judges, lawyers, and penitentiary staff to facilitate early access to justice to the accused. Of course, before COVID-19, many obstacles prevented early access to a lawyer by the accused. For example, the lack of financial resources for the accused to hire a lawyer, administrative obstacles to get a legal aid, such as processing of requests and corruption, and finally, the limited number of lawyers. In this context, we recommend the government and civil society organizations to prioritize the training of law enforcement personnel on human rights, especially rights of the accused, including rights to legal representation. We also need training for civil society organizations and human rights defenders on how better protect rights of the accused in collaboration with justice stakeholders. Lawyers also need more training on how best to protect rights of the accused, advocate for access to justice with local judicial actors, and work with the United Nations mechanism to protect human rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And I'd like to invite now Joy Madivo, our Justice Maker Fellow from Kenya. Joy, unmute and speak.
Thank you, Sanji, and hello, everybody. I'm sorry, today I've had a bit of drama with my gadget, but now I'm on course. Now, if we're looking at the challenges that we have had since the COVID epidemic started, one of the initial things, as has been pointed out by several people before, is how we changed incarceration. So in Kenya, what we saw is a depopulation first of petty offenders, but a lockdown of the other offenders. And so, as Jean-Claude has correctly pointed out, there's a lot of people who are not getting the support that they're getting from their lawyers, from their families. And so there's some routine things that would have been picked up, like torture or like unfair treatment that would have been picked up by people from the outside that are now not being able to be picked up. So that is one of the challenges we have seen. Another challenge we have seen is also access to justice has been greatly impeded. There has been a ruling that legal services are actually essential services. And so we are able to access the prisons if you need to go. However, because of social distancing, this has been very stilted, for lack of a better word. The courts are also not working full force. They are working remotely, so to speak. So there are challenges in, for example, if you're conducting a trial, when you're doing cross-examination, if there is physical evidence to be examined, this is proving to be quite challenging, and the trial is not as robust as it should be. But because that's what we have to make do with for now, it's proving to be a new normal. Another challenge that we have seen also is the fact that many judicial officers are not very comfortable using technology. So we've been having a problem of today you're using Teams, tomorrow it is Zoom, the next day it is Skype. And this lack of standardization, you're in a meeting room waiting for hours on end, it has proved to be very challenging. However, there's some innovations that are coming out of this entire situation. One of the things that has come out very strongly is the fact that now we are able to not just use technology, but yesterday, the head of the legal aid service declared there was going to be a toll-free number introduced in all the prisons where the prisoners could call the toll-free number and have access to a paralegal or a lawyer. This is huge, and we're hoping that it actually takes effect. There was actually a ruling yesterday, there was a judgment that said that a virtual trial is as good as any other trial, and it should be able to be upheld, so that people who are using an excuse of we wait until COVID to start trials, now this is supposed to remove that hurdle. We wait to see how the judgment will be affected, because it depends on the goodwill of the people, the lawyers, the judges, the prosecutors. But the court said, you know what, a virtual trial is as good as a physical trial, so stop keeping people waiting ad infinitum. And finally, one of the approaches that we've also used, every single day there's training, there's webinars, there's things that lawyers are doing to try and appraise themselves on progress and things to do. So we are learning a lot from you, for example, today, and from other jurisdictions on how to leverage on technology so that we can come from taking down things at the speed of His Lordship's pen to actually bringing it into the 21st century. So I think that's my 2 minutes, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Joy. As inspiring as always, Joy. And I want to invite now Mabel and Tizana Arispe, our Justice Maker Fellow from Bolivia. She'll be speaking in Spanish first, and then Pete Grayshok, my colleague from Geneva, will do a summary in English. So bear with us who don't speak Spanish, but I know some of you do speak Spanish, will be fine. Mabel. Mabel, where are you?
Excuse me.
Okay, yeah, hola.
Gracias, Sanchi, por presentarme. Soy Mabel Antesana, de IBJ, Justice Maker de Bolivia, y tengo 22 años ejerciendo la profesión de abogada, litigante y defensora. El acceso a la justicia se ve afectado primero por el autoritarismo de los gobiernos, que es inevitable en época de pandemia. La justicia, al igual que el área de salud, ha colapsado por falta de métodos y el uso de la tecnología en el sistema judicial. Los detenidos y encarcelados sufren un doble castigo, pues no tienen la forma de protegerse adecuadamente del contagio, y esa es la mayor crueldad en las cárceles, esperar a ser contagiado. En Bolivia se encuentran 25 presos en una sola celda y la probabilidad de contagio aumenta. También se les niega el acceso libre a su abogado porque las visitas a las cárceles son restringidas o negadas. Los alimentos escasean y no existe una debida atención por parte del régimen penitenciario a las cárceles, lo que motiva a que los detenidos se ingenien la manera de poder alimentarse ya sea estableciendo una olla común o esperando que algún familiar los visite con alimentos, arriesgándose el contagio, ¿no? Los Justice Makers, gracias al apoyo de IBJ, pudimos llegar a las cárceles y apoyar a los detenidos. Pudimos conocer experiencias internacionales y el manejo de la crisis ante el COVID-19 en diferentes países mediante un encuentro de Justice Makers vía Zoom. Y ahora nos pusimos de acuerdo en conformar un chat vía WhatsApp, lo cual nos mantendrá más en contacto y podremos ayudarnos entre nosotros. Actualmente nos damos modos para visitar a nuestros clientes y mantener consultas telefónicas y aprender el uso inmediato de plataformas para poder asistir a audiencias virtuales. En cuanto a las oportunidades e innovaciones, el poder acceder a plataformas virtuales nos abre un mundo de esperanzas, puesto que no solo pudimos capacitarnos gratuitamente en los talleres de la CIDH o la ONU, que antes estaban reservados para gente exclusiva en trabajo institucional. Gracias.
Okay, Pete, thank you very much, Mabel. Gracias, Mabel. And Pete, would you please give us a 1-minute summary?
Yes, Mabel mentioned that she is from Bolivia. She's a justice maker of IBJ, and she's been a practicing defense attorney for 22 years. She then went on to state that access to justice is first affected by the authoritarian tendencies that governments have and that are inevitable in times of crisis and pandemic, and that justice services, just like the health system, has faced heightened stress and in some areas has collapsed due to a lack of continuity and technology resources, and that detainees and prison staff suffer double punishment because they do not have the means to protect themselves from infection, and that this is the greatest cruelty that people in prisons are waiting to be infected. And in Bolivia, there are frequently 25 prisoners confined to one cell, and that the likelihood of contagion is increasing. Also, that prisoners are denied free access to their lawyers, free and regular access to their lawyers, and because prison visits are restricted and denied, and that food is scarce because there has not been proper attention given to the prison community, which means that detainees must find ways to feed themselves by setting up a common pot, or by waiting day after day for family members to arrive with food and risk contagion from the family members to the prisoners or from the prisoners to the family members. She closed by stating that thanks to the support of IBJ, that we justice makers have been assisted in our efforts to reach out to prisons and support detainees, and we've been able to learn about the experiences of international colleagues, and that this is happening through Zoom calls and now a WhatsApp group, Latin American Justice Makers and affiliate lawyers, which keeps us in touch and enables us to support each other. She closed by saying that she's been maintaining ways to visit clients through telephone consultations, and immediately learning how to use digital platforms to attend virtual hearings. And I think that's a good summary of what Mabel shared.
Gracias, Mabel, and thank you, Pete. And I want to invite Ajay Verma, Country Manager of IBJ India now.
Namaste, my name is Ajay Verma, and I'm Advocate and India Country Manager IBJ from New Delhi. First of all, it is an honor to be with the global family who believes in rule of law and access to justice. And during this time, as you are all aware, that India had the serious situation of overcrowding in prison population. 114% there was an occupancy rate in prison. 69% prison population consists of people waiting for their trial to be over. the people who have trials has not been completed. But during this pandemic, the situation has worsened. When the social visits, family visits stopped, court production is stopped, the prison population became panic. In some areas, riots happened in various prisons also. But the Honorable Supreme Court of India on 23rd of March, on the day when the national-wide lockdown was announced due to this COVID, took a cognizance suo motu, and in which the International Bridges to Justice, along with various civil society organizations and the National Forum for Prison Reforms, under my convenership, we approached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court directed all over India to constitute committee to decongest the prison, because the Supreme Court, as well as the civil society organization, took it to the Supreme Court that this is a priority, that prison social distancing is next to impossible in overcrowded prison. And as a result, the various states have released the prisoners. IBJ's volunteers lawyers, consisting of more than 200 lawyers volunteer group, started using technology during this time, and the young lawyers getting assisted by the senior lawyers from the groups by sharing the judgments, by sharing the techniques, skills. Then we approached media groups. We collaborated, as you understand the International Bridges to Justice. We bridged the gap amongst the civil society also. We collectively got together to help the prison administration, because this was not an easy task to decongest. Despite the direction of the Supreme Court, the prisoners were being released, but they were not able to reach to their homes because there was lockdown. So therefore, the Supreme Court was again approached by us, and the directions was given. The civil societies have, and we have all identified that the biggest hurdle during this time was to have access to clients, which is a valuable right for which these persons were deprived of. So despite the situation that the Indian judiciary has been upgrading technology for a long time, we all have video conferencing facilities. This system was not used, and the lawyers have not been given access to their clients. But still, the prison administration in some areas allowed the access through the virtual medium or through physical by maintaining social distances. The group of IBJ lawyers started taking the bail matters priority, because the courts only started hearing in some part of the India, the virtual hearings started hearing the bail applications. The bail application were moved by the lawyers group. Many of them were released, and the technology's hurdle, which was there in majority of the Indian states, lawyers were not able to use the technology. So we identified this as the biggest hurdle. So IBJ started conducting the webinars training sessions, and more than 12 webinars training sessions were started with involving senior top lawyers from India to give them a skill so that they can effectively represent their clients and also use the technology. I myself use this technology mode, and also assisted many lawyers to file the petition through virtual modes. As a result, many of the lawyers started using the virtual courts hearings. The other situation, which we also identified, that the civil societies have to come together to use collective resources to help these prisoners in jail, because of the many places there has been death reported. The situation was really bad, and now I wanted to share with you, only 12% so far has been released from the prison. And with that, I think this is not enough, but we can collectively do something more, and the administration will definitely work with the organizations like IBJ. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ajay. Thank you. I want to invite Chisu from Myanmar.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Jisoo, and I'm program coordinator of IBJ Myanmar program, and I'm honored to share the work of our lawyers with you all. So in Myanmar, the prison and pre-trial lockups conditions are overcrowded and unsanitary. Although the COVID-19 rates in Myanmar have been lower compared to many other countries, the detainees and their families are very much in fear of the viral infection inside. So the police has the police have been enforcing the public health laws in a very unfair and even way that put in the marginalized group of people at greater risk. For example, the police have dealt with Buddhist gathering only with like education or fines, but recently they have treated to Muslim religious meetings very differently, where all the participants were arrested, including 2 juveniles. And after 2 weeks, the accused were sent to the court and faced the real possibility of the substantial jail time. But fortunately, IBJ lawyers were there ready to fight for them. Since 2017, IBJ Myanmar lawyers have been vigilant to ensure due process and fair trial rights for the accused and the communities. And so we have focused on early client advocacy and release of the accused during the trial and the rights of the juveniles. So when we showed up at the juvenile court on May 8th to represent those 2 Muslim juveniles in that case, the judge knew who we are because of our work, but even so, we had to fight to get our representation accepted because the judge wanted a quick guilty plea and to pass the 3-month sentence. But we reach out to the government with the collaboration with the governmental social welfare department. We could convince the judge to release the juveniles back into the care of their parents. So a public health emergency like COVID-19 needs to be dealt with gently and fairly by the authorities. Police are still under control of the military, and the prosecutions and judges have been reluctant to review their decision, so which is still a system failure. So to overcome this, to police the police, we have purposefully included the justice stakeholders to our justice roundtables. In that way, we built a new set of expectations, which would allow to find commonality in the vocabulary of justice and fair trial rights, which we can rely upon when we do individual advocacy for the clients and also strategic litigations. So at our request recently, the prison officials have been restoring the clients' rights to access to their lawyers and the conditions of healthcare inside the prisons. And in addition, we submitted a set of recommendations to the president to protect the health and rights of the detainee. And after that, the president issued an amnesty order to release 25% of all sentenced prisoners in an effort to reduce the overcrowding prison in this pandemic. In this, back to the juveniles case. So IBJ lawyers made sure that they did not face the criminal justice system or the pandemic alone, because we were able to address an unfair and discriminatory application of the laws by addressing it sideways through the less controversial strategy of using the new child right law. So we all are learning to do justice again in Myanmar, and this is serving us well in this pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chisu, all the way from Myanmar at 11 p.m. at night, or maybe later, almost midnight. I want to invite last Mohammed Bakri to talk about our Syria program. Mohammed.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mohammed Bakri, IBJ Syria Program Manager. The justice system in Syria and the Syrian law contain many loopholes to begin with. Proceedings take an exceptionally long time, leading to long detention time. And many detainees spend 1 year or even more in detention before there's a final ruling. The Syrian law does not offer early access to counsel for the accused, meaning that people cannot have access to a lawyer at the police station. And as a result, the police are more likely to commit violations and other forms of human rights abuse. On top of that, most penalties under the Syrian law are custodial. The COVID-19 pandemic worsened this situation because detainees are at a higher risk of getting infected due to, one, overcrowded prisons and detention facilities making social distancing impossible, and two, because those who are ill seldom receive medical care. IBJ lawyers inside Northwest Syria are highlighting those issues and working closely with government and non-government stakeholders to try and decongest those prisons. Although the COVID-19 situation is unfortunate, our lawyers were able to use it as an opportunity to create a task force whose duty is to push for rapid court proceedings and assert due process rights. Also, our lawyers are trying to request judges to release the accused on affordable bail and to secure as many access to justice to as many detainees as possible. One example of early access to justice comes from IBJ lawyer Abdulaziz Darwish, who was able to release 20 detainees in a single case and resolve the issue at the police station, preventing those who are accused from being sent to prison. In Syria, if there is one thing that we can do to change or to prevent due process violations and protect the rights of the accused, that is early access to defense lawyers. This was the main topic that our lawyers discussed in the first round table that they held in Aleppo in 2018. They wanted to bridge the gap in the Syrian law that doesn't give the accused the right to a defender in police stations. And through early access, lawyers can keep the police under close scrutiny to prevent any violations. We have recommended that courts prioritize cases which involve persons who are held in pretrial detention to prevent illegal detention of those people. Another major step that can drive the change in the justice system is to raise the public's awareness on the rights of the accused, because that will help people fight for their rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we should acknowledge that those lawyers in Syria are inside Syria working in a very extreme situation, in a war situation. And we are very grateful for those people who are working in the northwestern region of Syria. And thank you very much, all my colleagues from around the world who join us, and the very magnitude of those insights and inspiration that you brought to the discussion, that even in the most difficult situations, we can be creative and respond more effectively. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay. I mean, that was around the world, and it's also incredibly inspiring. And I know we have a few other IBJ country colleagues around the world that are on the phone or on the call right now. I know we only have about 5 minutes left for some overall comments or thoughts. I mean, what we thought after that very round of inspiring stories and also suggestions was whether we have any ideas on how we can scale, any ideas that maybe people want to add to. I'll just make the comment that I know technology has been critical across the world because of COVID-19, and I think that the stories about the virtual trials and so forth, and I know that was the comment from Kenya, and I know a few other countries are considering that as a huge opportunity. And so maybe I'll invite one of our participants on the phone, David Kirkpatrick, who's the CEO of Techonomy, runs a very well-known technology conference in the United States. Maybe David, I think you had your hand up to maybe add a comment, maybe to kick us off for the next few minutes of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to IBJ and to all of you for speaking so eloquently. And all I can say is that I'm deeply impressed with your commitment and your effectiveness and your activism. And it's shocking to me here in the US just to hear the consistency of the challenges that you face all over the world. But I do agree with Alex that as someone who's observed a significant upsurge in the application of certain kinds of technologies, particularly technologies like the one we're using right here, there does seem to be the promise and the possibility, at least, that in many countries, a more digitized process of application of law may be in prospect. And I would certainly hope that that's the case. And would just end by commending you all on your extraordinary work, and I'm deeply impressed. So thank you for allowing me to say that, Alex.
Thank you, David. Opening the floor for anyone else. Oh, Ken, you have your hand up. So please, absolutely everyone use the chat. Put your hand up if you wish. Ken, over to you. Maybe also introduce yourself, please. I know you, of course, but please introduce yourself.
Sure. Okay. My name is Kenneth Cuquier. I'm a journalist at The Economist. I'm also terrible at Zoom, so my hand will stay up probably for the rest of the session. Please forgive me. Many of you have talked about the idea of learning from each other, creating a network so that you can actually just quote unquote support each other. My question would be, what does it actually mean? I've heard this now for a long time, of that by building a network, that you become stronger because of the network, because you can support each other. What does that mean in practice, whether within a country, a legal community, or among defenders across countries?
Okay, I'll open it up to any of the defenders that want to respond, or any ideas on that.
May I hazard a response?
Please, 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 yes.
One of the ways we learn from each other is lawyers are very dependent on something called precedent. And so when somebody has tried something and has worked, and they tell you how they did it, then you're able to apply it in your situation. So for example, the challenge I was setting out earlier about how we can use our, what do you call it? How to interrogate and cross-examine using technology has become a big challenge in Kenya. But we are learning from other communities how you can use somebody on the other end to examine the evidence on your behalf. And like now the regulation is use counsel on the other end to examine cross-examine the person on your behalf, and use that can be adopted as part of the record of the court. So that's how one of the ways we learn from each other. The other way also is what system is better? Is it Zoom? Is it Teams? Is it what? Because we have areas with low bandwidth, no what. So it's just a sharing of information and cross-pollination, as it were. Thank you.
Joy, I thought, and I saw Mia smiling, I could imagine you doing a virtual court case and Mia being your co-counsel, telling, arguing the case for you and also supporting you with lines of argument. I mean, that could happen now. With virtual courtrooms, you can actually, there's no reason why any lawyer in the world can't be your co-counsel. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if I'm using the right term in a case, and that sort of is really exciting. Maybe time for one more comment or question. Yes, Mia, back to you then, please.
I just wanted to say that as a career-long defender, I've been a defender for 46 years, I can tell you that the comments of my colleagues, the camaraderie, all of the things that we share that way advance us not just professionally, but emotionally, because the work is very difficult, the work is very spiritual, and sharing it with a large mass of other defenders who are like-minded is another way for us to advance our careers, our education, and our level of professionalism. And I think that ideas on our flanks with each other for people that are going through the same struggle are invaluable. They are the only people that share that situation, that circumstance with each other. So our reactions, our tactics and our strategies within the struggle, within the crisis, I think can be shared with each other for the purpose of making sure we actually do our job, which is defend the rights of our clients and actually try to live up to the ideals of each one of our countries, which each believes on some level in the same things as IBJ, that the people of those countries deserve the best possible access to the rule of law and the access of justice that can be provided. Crisis tests all of us, and we need each other even more right now. So defenders, all of us need each other.
Thank you, Mia. Again, thank you to everyone. I want to make sure we end on time, so I'm going to pass back to Karen, founder and CEO of International Bridges of Justice, for a closing comment. So Karen, over to you, please.
Well, I was just looking at the message from Joy, who said to everyone, just even knowing that you're not alone makes a big difference, knowing that we're on the struggle together. And I am just truly humbled to and really honored to hear from the defenders and to hear also the questions and comments from the wider participants, as well as your comments on the chat. And I know that, you know, as the defenders and the justice makers, and as they're speaking, they make it sound so easy, but we know it's not easy. We know that it takes tremendous courage. And I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you, really. In a way, the defenders really release an energy for us. And we're really there to walk together on this journey. I know that I myself have been both humbled and really transformed in the process of working together with everyone at International Bridges of Justice. And this is just the beginning, really, of a conversation that we're having. It's the first time that we're having so many people together. Many of you are old friends, so it's wonderful to see you. Some of you are new friends. And as we begin this collective journey together, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we look forward to all the ways that we can work together collectively. And so Joy, this one is for you. This is our poem from International Bridges of Justice, which I think reflects your words exactly, and dedicated to everyone. Thank you. It's take courage, friends. The road is often long, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. But deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we look forward to the ways that we can work together. I think that you have the email of International Bridges of Justice, and we have yours as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karen. Everyone have a wonderful evening or afternoon or morning, wherever they